So this is the beginning of our series on the 4 agreements. And the tagline of this book is A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. That sounds pretty good, right? Yeah. And this has been a pretty popular book in spirituality circles for a while. It was actually first published 20 years ago, so it's not anything new. Not that there's really that much new anyway. But I like it because it keeps it simple. And when I went, there's 4 Sundays between Mother's Day and Father's Day. 4 agreements. That'll fit just nicely there, won't it? And the author, Don Michael Ruiz, postulates that he says, we've made a lot of agreements without realizing. We agree that what you're sitting on is a chair. We call it a chair. We all call it a chair. That worked out pretty good because we know what we're talking about, right? And we agree that the color of said chair is blue. Also helpful for us to be able to communicate and agree with each other. And we even agree that in English we spell it Chair. Not that long ago, there was lots of funny ways to spell things. So having a standardized way of spelling is actually pretty nice agreement. It helps us communicate with each other. The trouble lies in the things that we accept or that we agree upon that are harmful. Like, there's not enough. I know a lot of us have at some point fallen in the trap of agreeing with that. Or, I'm a bad fill in the blank. I'm sure we all could probably fill in the blank with something we maybe have agreed to at some point in our lifetime. Or, here's one. Things will always be this way, and the only thing we can do is suck it up. Now, in the book, he differentiates between agreements we've made in fear and agreements which those ones made in fear, they dissipate or expend energy. And then we have those agreements that are made from love, and they conserve or grow our energy. And we become more free when we release the ones that are made from fear. That makes super easy, simple sense, right? So, but nature doesn't like a vacuum. Things grow. So what do we put in their place? And that's why we have the 4 agreements. And the first one of the 4 agreements is be impeccable with your word. Now, on first glance, this may seem like it's about keeping your commitments and telling the truth. And it is, but it's oh so much more. That's just the beginning. See, the word is your power to create. Unity's co-founder Charles Fillmore, when he was creating the 12 powers, he put the location in our body for the power of power, dominion, mastery in the throat. Because that's the center of where we speak and call forth. And if that's where we speak from, that's what we're using to be the master of our world, to have dominion or control over our world. And so, that old schoolyard taunt, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not true. Because bones can be fixed. A careless word now and then, yes, may have minimal damage, but I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of happy, vibrant people who go around saying, I'm sick and tired. I know a lot of people who say I'm sick and tired of da-da-da-da-da, but they're not healthy, happy, vibrant people usually. And those happy, healthy, vibrant people are not usually the ones who you hear saying, oh, this is killing me. Interesting. Correlation or causation? So what does impeccable mean? according to the dictionary. It means high standards, faultless, without sin. Oh, I said the S word. But if you go back to the Latin root, im means without, and peccatus means sin. So impeccable really means without sin. And when we remember that sin means to make a mistake, then impeccable means without a mistake or without going against yourself, because going against yourself would be a mistake, right? So in the book, Don Michael Ruiz writes, from this point of view, the whole concept of sin changes from something moral or religious to something common sense. Sin begins the rejection of yourself. Self-rejection is the biggest sin you can commit. Impeccability leads to life. So when we're impeccable with our words, we are in alignment with our best selves. We speak words of kindness and care, because harmful words are not our best selves. Those are against us, harmful words, right? We agree to do things and follow through, and we create boundaries around things that are not ours to do. That's also being for us. When we are impeccable with our word, we use words of strength and affirmation for ourselves and for others. We remember that the voice and the word is our power to and our ability to create and have mastery in our lives. It's our power to create. I mean, literally creating everything in our world. So sick and tired is probably not helping. And yes, we want to use these life-affirming words with and to others. We want to refrain from gossip because that's not usually life-affirming. We want to refrain from put-downs. Definitely not life-affirming. We want to refrain from unkindness. And I'm not saying this is easy. I'm just saying it's something we need to do. The work we do on ourselves is the biggest freeing step of all, because we say and do these things towards others, but man, you know that finger that's pointing out, the three that are pointing back at us. So when I think about like retraining ourselves, I think about my college campus. And like most college campuses, there's those big green grassy spots between buildings. And often when there's a door that doesn't have the sidewalk, you're supposed to go around like this to get somewhere, right? But there's a door here and there's a door here. What happens, right? Everybody starts cutting across the grass. Now, if people were just using the grass to frolic and hang out and play frisbee and do all of those things, the grass is fine. Grass is very resilient. It bounces back. It's made for people to frolic on, right? But if people start cutting across and doing it all the time, well, we end up with a muddy path, right? And the groundskeepers are not happy because the grass can't keep up. It can't bounce back. So our minds are kind of the same way, right? So if we have a fleeting harmful thought or word that we share, it's sort of like the people playing frisbee. We just come through and we do our thing. It's like, whoop, had a negative thought and off it went again. Doesn't have any traction. But when we have it again and again and again, it's like all the students cutting across the quad. And we create a track. And then when we say, okay, well, I want to break this, let's just pretend for a moment that the thought that we're caught up on is I'm not smart enough. We've probably all thought it at least once. And whether or not it created a track is your own story. But if we want to create a new route, we're going to have to figure out how to keep our thoughts on the sidewalk, so to speak, and off the grass. And that's going to take a lot of practice. So we're going to need to use our impeccable words long enough so that when If you slip and you try to go down the I'm not smart enough path, you can't find it. There's nothing there for you to go down. You're just like, oh, grass. There's nothing for it to grab onto. So our words, spoken or thought, can be poison or they can be the cure. Just as easy, both the same. And that's what this is all about. It's very, like you were saying earlier, the song we're going to sing later, it's very simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. The same thing with being impeccable with our words. It's very simple. The concept is easy peasy. The doing it part, that's not so easy. And I'm not saying that sometimes people hear things like this and they say, oh, well, we should just sugarcoat everything and pretend everything is fine. That's the way to do it. Bah, that's wrong. That will not work, because being impeccable means not going against yourself. And so if something's not working for you and causing a problem for you and you're not saying anything about it, you're actually going against yourself. You're doing a silent yes. And so maybe you need a moment to find a kind way to express your need. Or maybe you need to figure out even what your need is. Maybe you know something's not right, but you don't know what it is yet, so you need some time, sure. But don't wait too long. Because if something's not working, waiting doesn't actually help anyone. A while ago, I had a roommate who was very, felt nauseated by a dish that I was, when I go through moods where like I make a certain thing a whole lot because, you start doing it and you're like perfecting it and having a good time. So anyway, this particular dish made my roommate feel nauseated, but I didn't know. So there I was being happy, eating well, having a good time, making my dish. And finally, after like 2 months, she tells me, that makes me sick. And of course, it wasn't said in a very kind way, because by this time, because they'd been stewing over it for 2 months, they were pretty irritated, stronger than irritated. And I was really upset and sad because obviously I didn't want to cause distress for my roommate, but I didn't know. And it would have been so much easier if they told me way back the first time that they felt ill, and I could have been like, okay, well, let me make sure that if I'm going to cook this, I do it when you're not here, and I make sure to vent out, have the window open and do that, or just figure out a different way to cook something so it doesn't bother you. So it caused a lot of stress and struggle because she didn't stand up for herself and just say, hey, it's not working for me. And that's not to say that when you live with somebody, especially when you live with something, there is definitely always going to be an opportunity for compromise and communication. That's the best part about living with someone, right? But if someone's feeling ill, then they should say something. And you should say something. If something's really bugging you, then you should say something. That's being impeccable with your word too. And you don't have to do it meanly. The sooner you do it, the less likely you're going to be irritated when you say it, because you don't have all that buildup of emotions around it, right? So maybe she didn't say anything because she was afraid that I wouldn't care, or that I would tell her she was being silly, or maybe it was fear that I would think that her needs weren't important and that it would hurt our relationship. But, by not speaking, she was choosing not to love herself. And so, when we do this, yes, we're going to have to practice communication, and we're going to have to practice forgiveness, and we're going to have to practice compromise and all of those things. But it's so much better than sitting around and stewing and being annoyed with people and irritated, and then you end up saying things you don't mean to say because it's all been built up, and That's not very good. That's not very healthy. And so, like I said, it's the most simple agreement, and it's the hardest and the most important. Be impeccable with your word. Don't be against yourself. So your homework, you know how I feel about homework. Your homework is about listening. Listen to the words that you use aloud and in your mind. Are they words of life or words of decay? Do they come from fear or do they come from love? It's hard, especially when you're in middle school like y'all. Whew. But you can do it. So in this practice of healing our words, we get to be vigilant. We get to be defenders of the grass of our minds, so to speak. Once we notice we're missing the mark, we've made a mistake, then we begin the work of coming back, retraining. It's like training a puppy. You know, you can yell at them all to all ends that they made a mistake, but it's not going to do nearly as much work as just picking them up and bringing them back to where they need to be, right? And we do this with our mind over and over and over again until it realizes, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I want to be. This is a good path. So as we clean up our language, remember our inner dialogue is as important as our outer dialogue. We are building a solid foundation, a nice, thick, grassy lawn in our minds that will give less traction to any fearful, unloving thought. You know, when we believe in ourselves and we have that strength, if we know that we're brilliant and smart, if someone says you're dumb, doesn't even register. That pathway does not exist. And whatever that is for you, we've all probably have a few tracks of like that in our minds or have. It doesn't have any traction. So as we build up and become more and more for ourselves, more and more impeccable with our words, we do have that personal freedom that we are talking about. It's a lifetime work. It's a lifetimes of work. Because we may realize, even though we think we got it all figured out, oh, wait, there was one more thing. That's why we are practicing listening. Always practicing listening. And it's the key to our personal freedom. So, be well and speak peace.